Hey everyone, it's Naomi, the owner of Nomemade GF Bakery. It's been a while since we shared a recipe, but part of our thing is we love to share recipes that you can make your very own gluten-free delicious treats at home. Today's recipe is going to feature this show-stopping dessert, this classic French dessert called Croquembouche. Basically, it's 3 components. It's profiteroles or cream puffs with a filling. I chose chocolate cream cheese filling, and then this fantastic caramel on the outside. So let's get going. A croquembouche is basically a tower of cream puffs. Sometimes people will just build the tower of puffs. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use this cone, and we'll do the cream puffs around it, but it makes a super fancy dessert for wherever you're ended up bringing it. First up, we're going to do our profiteroles or our cream puffs. And the base to every cream puff is our choux pastry. Choux pastry is a type of dough that's made from super simple ingredients. I guarantee you have them already at home. So we're just going to combine most of our ingredients into a pot. We're going to start over high heat for now. So we're going to start with 320 mils of water, just a little less than 1.5 cups. And we're going to add about 10 tablespoons or 150 grams of butter. So this is cold butter. I'm just going to put it right in here. To that, I'm going to also add 2 tablespoons or 25 grams of sugar. And then if you're using unsalted butter, I would add about 3/4 teaspoon of salt in here. We're just going to let it come to a nice boil. As soon as it comes to a boil, we'll take it off the heat and do our next step. So this is almost to a boil. As you can see, the butter is almost all melted. I'm just going to wait till it's fully melted and boiling. And then what we're going to do is pull it off of the heat, and we're going to add in 1 1/3 cups or about 174 grams of gluten-free flour. So now that the mixture is boiling, I'm just going to remove it from the heat. Put on a hot pad here in front of me. And then we're going to add in our flour. So we're just going to pour it in. And you want to use a wooden spoon for this. It helps it come together. You're just going to start stirring. First, it'll get all incorporated. Just going to keep stirring and stirring. Basically what you're doing is you want to make sure all the moisture is coming out of the batter. So the flour is going to absorb the moisture. You want to keep stirring until it starts forming a ball and pulling away from the sides like this. Once you get to this point, you want to put it back on the heat. This is still pretty hot since I'm using this electric burner, so I'm just going to put it back on the heat, and we're going to stir it for about 30 seconds or until more of that moisture is out. Alright, so now it's been cooking for an extra 30 seconds. Pull that extra moisture out, so I'm just going to take it off of the stove again. And then before we start adding the eggs, I'm actually going to let it sit for about 5 minutes, just so that it doesn't cook the eggs when we add them. It will still be really nice and warm, but just not too hot. So if I was doing a super large batch, what I would do is put this in the stand mixer and mixing each eggs using that. But since I'm only adding 4 eggs, I can use my brute strength and make it work. So we're just going to start by adding eggs. We're going to do one at a time, and then we're going to mix that in. This will look curdled and broken the first couple eggs you do, and then as you add more, it'll come together and get nice and silky, smooth, shiny. So just trust the process and keep going. That egg's all incorporated, so we're going to go ahead and add a second one. The amount of eggs that you need might vary depending on where you are, what the humidity level is, etc. So I'll show you 2 tests to know when it's done. You might have to add a little bit less or a little bit more eggs. But 4 is like the approximate number. So keep vigorously stirring. Again, it'll look separated here, but it'll come together. For number 3. Alright, so then we're going to go ahead and add our last egg. Maybe. So it's starting to get a little looser, a little shinier. I need 1 more. Okay, so 4 eggs have been incorporated. This still looks pretty thick. It's not super shiny how we want it, and it doesn't pass the test to know when your choux pastry is done. When you know it's done, I'll show you once we add this egg, but is if you pick it up off the spatula like this, it should have a really nice V instead of plopping like that. V-shaped form from the batter. So let's go add this 5th egg, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. So it's a super humid day here today, so the 5th egg still didn't get me quite to where I want to be. So I think I'm going to add a half of another one. I'll show you what I mean. It's still a little bit thick. When you do the test, it sort of just gloops down. This is pretty good. We want this V, this is the V shape I'm talking about. I just wanted a tiny bit thinner. So I'm going to add about half, maybe a quarter to a half of another egg. So I added about a third of that last egg probably, and I'll show you the batter is super nice and shiny. And then it passes our V test. So when you lift the batter up off the spoon, you want it to come down in this nice elongated V. See that? Perfect. Another test you can do to see if it's ready, I just washed my hands, is the finger test. So you take your finger and you run it through the dough like this. And you want the sides to stay separated. You don't want it to come together. So that's another good indicator that you have the right texture. All right, now the fun part, let's get to piping. So I have this piping bag here fitted with a Wilton 2A tip. It's like a medium open round tip. That's what I'm gonna use to pipe the profiteroles. So I'm just gonna bend the bag so the batter doesn't come out and put it in a tall glass here. And then we can add our batter to the bag. Well, a trick that I have to help your profiteroles rise is brushing the parchment paper with a tiny bit of water. It barely has to be visible, but the steam that forms underneath your profiteroles while they're baking helps push them up, and so you get a nice hollow center. I'm gonna start with about half my batter just so I have a little bit more control. And we're just gonna pipe about 1-inch round blobs. If there's a little tip, it's okay, we're gonna flatten them out. They just have to have about 1 inch of space between them. We're gonna try to get about 50 from this. So I just started with about half of them, so there's 24 here. What I'm gonna do is put my finger in a little bit of water and then flatten down this little bulge on the top. This little curly cues, we want them nice and flat. Well, the last step before baking is you're just gonna brush them with a little bit of egg wash. To make egg wash, you just do an egg with about 1 tablespoon of water. Mix that up and then brush them on. That helps get a nice crispy exterior to your profiteroles. Now these are ready to go into the oven. So I have the oven set at 425 degrees and we're gonna bake them at that for 15 minutes. And then without opening the oven, that's super important. Don't open the oven, turn your temperature down to 375 and bake for another 15 minutes until golden brown. So it's been 30 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and check on our profiteroles. Ooh, they're beautiful. They're huge, oh my gosh. But they look nice and golden brown, nice crispy exterior. Once you tap on them. Great. So we'll go ahead and pipe round 2. So we're just going to take the remaining batter and pipe it on the same pan that we did. I'm going to try to make them similar size. So I just pat them down with a little wet finger, and then now I'm just going to brush the egg wash on again. And then same thing, we'll go in the oven at 425 for 15 minutes and then back down to 375 for 15 minutes. These are nice and golden brown. When you take, they should have like a little sharp crunchy exterior, and the bottom should be nice and golden brown. So we'll let these cool all the way before filling them with our delicious chocolate cream cheese filling, and then piping or assembling the croquembouche. So now we're gonna make the filling. I chose a chocolate cream cheese filling. Normally people do like a creme patissier or a pastry cream. To be honest, I bought like 100 extra things of cream cheese by accident, so I'm gonna do a chocolate cream cheese filling. So what I have here is 3 cups of powdered sugar. I'm just gonna sift in about a half a cup of cocoa powder, so 50 grams. Cocoa powder tends to clump up like that, so that's why I run it through the sifter. I don't sift my powdered sugar. I don't find that it makes any difference. You can if you'd like, but it saves you a step just to do the cocoa powder. So I'm gonna start with a stick or 8 tablespoons of butter. I always use salted because I love salted butter. It's my favorite food. And then I'm gonna add 6 ounces of cream cheese. Okay. And then I'm just gonna mix that up until it's nice and fluffy. Right, so then we're just gonna add about a teaspoon or 5 mils of vanilla extract. And then slowly we're just gonna incorporate our powdered sugar and our cocoa powder mixture. So I'm just gonna add about a third of that in. And then we'll mix that till it's all incorporated. And then in increments, we're just gonna add the rest and stir in between each addition until it's all combined and incorporated. All right, so that's ready. Then what we're gonna do is just transfer it from the bowl into a bag lined with a smaller piping tip. I'll show you the one I use. I have a Wilton piping tip number 10. It's just a smaller round tip. So this is nice because we can use it to puncture a hole through the bottom of the cream puff as well as fill it. Again, I'm just gonna pinch it off, put it in our cup. That way we can easily fill it. So now that my profiteroles are cooled down enough, what I'm gonna do is poke holes at the bottom of each one. So I just have a little Wilton tip here. I'm just gonna make a little hole there. And we'll stick our piping tip in with the filling and squeeze. You'll be able to feel it filling up and you'll see it come right to the bottom. You don't wanna overfill. Otherwise it has the chance of bursting on you. Gonna keep on filling. They should get nice and heavy. You'll feel the ones that are full. And don't put too much in, otherwise they can explode from the top. The last step is to make our caramel. That's how we're gonna assemble the croquembouche. I have a saucepan here over high heat. And we're just gonna add 2 cups of sugar. And then 2/3 cups of water, so 180 mils. And then about 2 tablespoons of corn syrup. 1, 2. And we're just gonna stir it this one time. So we're just gonna stir it to get it all incorporated here. And then we're just gonna sit here and watch and wait until the sugar dissolves. So we're just gonna let this mixture come to a boil, which it almost has here. And then the next step we're gonna do is actually cover the pan. Once we cover, we're not gonna stir it or anything, we're just gonna cover the pan, and the steam that gets trapped inside will help dissolve those sugar crystals. So that'll be the next step. Once we have those sugar crystals dissolved, we'll uncover the pan and let it cook, again, not stirring, for about 5 minutes till it gets darker in color. I'm just gonna cover it here and wait a couple minutes. All the sugar crystals have been steamed, so I turn it down to medium, and we're just gonna let it cook for about 5 more minutes until the color turns like a dark amber. We don't want to get it too burnt because we don't want it to taste like any burning. You don't want, like, typical caramel gets really nice and dark and brown. We're just going for like a pale caramel color. So we'll give it a couple minutes to do its thing. So we're still staring at the caramel. It's taken a little longer than I thought, so it might take closer to like 10 minutes. It's probably been about, I don't know, 7 right now. Still a little bit pale, so we're just gonna let it keep going. So we got that amber color we're looking for. Don't want to let it get too dark. You can smell that it smells toasty now. But we're going to move quickly at this point so the caramel doesn't harden. What I'm going to do is carefully hold on to the bottom of a profiterole. Dip it into the caramel. We'll let the excess drip off, and then we'll put it down. So I'm just dipping, letting the excess hang off. Because if you flip it over too fast, you're going to have caramel that drips down and can burn you. It's really hot. I'll just get it as best you can. Get into the last few. And then we get to put it all together. So this caramel just started getting a little bit thicker after I started dipping them for so long. So I just put it back on the hot plate over high heat just for a minute or so to loosen it back up. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna dip the backs of each profiterole in caramel, and then we'll stick them on our cone here. And then we'll make a circle and go up, up, up and around until it's all full. And then I'm just gonna dip the bottom ends in, let it drip off a little, and then stick it right on the board. Then when we add our second layer, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in between the other 2. So like this right here. So dip, and then we'll put in the middle of the other 2. And then we're gonna go all the way up. All right, so we're just slowly but quickly moving our way up. Just continue to dip and place. This caramel's super sticky, so it's easy to stick them right on the paper. So what we did, I forgot to talk about the cone. I just ordered like craft cones for arts and crafts online, and then we just wrapped this in parchment paper so that it was safe to stick the food onto. And then we just put it on a 10-inch cake board so that we had room and spot for the caramel to fall onto once we decorate it. And it's nice, so traditionally there's no cone that's used. A lot of people will just create like a cream top, like puff tower. But since I'm not feeding an army, I just wanted to make a little bit less. So this way I don't have to build in my base, I can just use this. Finishing touch. Cute! Okay, now we get to add our fun sugar spinning. Okay, so the last step is just a decorative step, but I think it makes it look fun and like the classic croquembouche, is we're gonna put this fun like spun sugar around the edges. So the easiest way to do this I've found is by taking a fork and then taking a reserved caramel that you have and dipping it in, and then across a piece of parchment paper, and then we're just gonna flick the forks back and forth. These little sugar strands will fall off of it. And then once we peel them off, we'll be able to like decorate it by wrapping it around the croquembouche. So this gets a little bit hard, and then you can try to peel it up off the parchment. It's okay if it looks messy because you're just gonna take it and drape it. Let's start here. Drape it across the croquembouche. So we're just gonna keep going around, making a little cage. Perfect. Peel it off. Some strands come off better than others. Wrapping. This is entirely for decoration, so totally optional, but I think it looks fun. So here you have it, a finished croquembouche. Doesn't it look like a party, like showstopper? Can't wait to show my family. Thanks for watching. The full recipe and written instructions will be on my website, nomadegf.com. Thank you.